Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. I hope you're having a good day. Before the break, we were looking at how to turn fractions into decimals. Now we're going to look at how to turn decimals into fractions. So we're going to start with a terminating decimal. A terminating decimal is one that comes to an endpoint. To do this, the digits to the right of the decimal are the numerator of the fraction. Any digits in front of the decimal are the whole number. So let's look at the decimal 1 4/10. Well, there's one digit to the right of the decimal or behind the decimal, and that digit is a 4. So that becomes the numerator part of the fraction. The digit in front of the decimal is 1 whole, so that's going to be the whole number part of this fraction. All we need now is the denominator. And for a terminating decimal, the number of decimal places indicates whether the denominator is 10, 100, 1000, etc. So, in this question, there is one decimal spot. One decimal spot means 1 0 and a 1 in front for 10. So, the fraction is 1 4/10. Always reduce to lowest terms. We've been doing that almost since the start of the year. So the greatest common factor of 4 and 10 is 2. So I'm going to divide the numerator and denominator by 2. And that's going to give me 1 and 2/5. And there's my decimal, terminating decimal, turned to a fraction in lowest terms. Let's do some more examples. The instructions here say write as a fraction in lowest terms. So, number 1, we have 88 hundredths. We have 2 digits behind the decimal, so that means those 2 digits become the numerator of the fraction. There is no whole number in front, it's just a 0, so we don't have a whole number in this one. Now in this example, there are 2 digits behind the decimal or 2 digits to the right of the decimal. So that means in our denominator, I'll have 2 zeros and a 1 in front. And that decimal is 88/100. Now maybe the hardest part is putting this in lowest terms, and you can use your factor sheets for this. The greatest common factor of 88 and 100 is 4. So I can divide the numerator and denominator by 4. 88 divided by 4 is 22. And 100 divided by 4 is 25. So this is 22/25. Number 2, 2 and 2 hundredths. Well, for the numerator, you take the digits behind the decimal, 0 and 2. That becomes the numerator of the fraction. However, I don't need that 0 there, so I can just erase it because it's still the number 2 without the 0 there. That's going to be the numerator of the fraction. The whole number is the whole number 2, the digit that's in front of the decimal. And since there's 2 decimal spots, that means the denominator has 2 zeros and a 1 in front. 2 and 2/100. The greatest common factor of 2 and 100 is 2, so I'll divide both of those by 2, and I get that this is 2 wholes. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. 2 and 1/50. Number 3, 5 and 5 thousandths. We have 5 wholes, 0 in the tenths, 0 in the hundredths, 5 in the thousandths. So the numerator of my fraction will be this digit 5, this one right here. I don't need to have the 2 zeros in front on the fraction. All the digits Usually it's all the digits behind the decimal go on top of the fraction, but since these first two are zeros, all we need to have is the 5 on top. The whole number is 5. And in this case, there are 3 decimal spots, which means I need to have 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3, and a 1 in front. That's 5 and 5 over 1,000. Now, to put this in lowest terms, the greatest common factor of 5 and 1,000 is 5. So I'll divide the numerator by 5 and the denominator by 5. Now I still have 5 wholes. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1,000 divided by 5. Well, 10 divided by 5 is 2. And then tack on the 2 extra zeros for 200. 5 and 1 over 200. The last one, I have 0 and 3 ten-thousandths. Well, the digits behind the decimal go on top of the fraction. Now, once again, this is 0, 0, 0, 3, but I don't need those zeros. Just need to have the 3. Now, that's the numerator. The denominator, count the number of decimal spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's going to be 4 zeros on the bottom of this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 1 in front. This is 3 over 10,000, and that can't be reduced because there's no greatest common factor of 3 and 10,000 other than 1. And when it's 1, you're done. So that's writing a fraction in lowest terms, changing a decimal to a fraction when we have a terminating decimal. Let's look at a repeating decimal. It's almost the same. To write a repeating decimal as a fraction, the digits to the right of the decimal are the numerator of the fraction. So same thing as before. In this case, we have 5 and 3/10 repeating. The digit behind the decimal, that repeating 3, becomes the numerator of the fraction. The whole number, 5, is the whole number of this mixed number. So everything's the same so far. Now, here's what's different. For every different repeating digit, place a 9 in the denominator. So in this case, since I have 1, 3 repeating, this 3 is repeating over and over again because it's got that bar on top, I'm going to place one single 9 in the denominator. If you remember before the break, we were looking at all these repeating decimals that have patterns of 9. To put it in lowest terms, divide the numerator and denominator by 3. Oops. And you get 5 and 1/3. So everything is exactly the same here, except for every repeating digit that you have, every different one, you put a 9 on the bottom. Now let's take a look at this. 4 and 6/10 repeating. Well, the whole number is going to be 4. We have a single 6 that's repeating over again. That becomes the numerator. And since I have 1 6 repeating, I put a 9 on the bottom. To put it in lowest terms, I divide the numerator and denominator by 3, and I get 4 and 2 over 3. Let's look at number 2. I have 0.21 repeating. 21, 21, 21. Well, the digits that are repeating become the numerator of the fraction. Since there are 2 digits repeating this time, I put 2 9s on the bottom. And I have 21 over 99. Now, I want to reduce this to lowest terms by finding the greatest common factor of 21 and 99. I think it's 3. So I'll divide by 3, and I get 7 over 33. Okay, number 3. We have a mixed number again. We have a whole number in front. That's 3. We have 2 repeating digits this time, the 4 and the 5. So I'm going to put the 4 and the 5 on top of the fraction. And this time, since it's 2 repeating digits, I put 2 9s on the denominator of the fraction. Now I recognize here to get this in lowest terms, I'll divide both numbers by 9. And I'll get 3 and 5 over 11. If you remember before the break, we looked at all these patterns of 9 and patterns of 11, and they're all based at a 9, right? Okay, last one. 3 digits repeating this time. So the numerator of the fraction will have 3 digits on top. And since there's 3 digits repeating, I put 3 9s on the bottom. And in this case, there's not the only greatest common factor of 107 and 999 is 1. So this is in lowest terms already. We're done. Okay. So writing a fraction in lowest term, or writing a decimal as a repeating decimal as a fraction, you make them out of 9. Writing a terminating decimal as a fraction, you make them out of 10 or 100 or 1,000. Okay, let's just review what we've done here. So if we had 0 and 65 hundredths repeating, 0 and 65 hundredths not repeating, we'd have a 65 on top and 100 on the bottom. And then we'd reduce to lowest terms. Divide by 5, and you get 13 out of 20. Same thing here, terminating decimal. Whole number 2, 105 on top, the digits behind the decimal on top. And since there's 3 digits behind the decimal, there are 3 zeros in the denominator, 2 and 105 over 1,000. Then you would reduce to lowest terms by dividing by 5. This would become 2 and 21 over 200. So if you have terminating decimals, you make them out of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. But then repeating decimals, very similar, but now we have 12 wholes. In this case, we have a single digit that's repeating over and over again, so we put the 6 on top. And since it's 1 repeating digit, we put 1 single 9 on the bottom. Then we reduce to lowest terms by dividing by 3, and we get 12 and 2/3. Now for the last one, number 4, it's 2 repeating digits because the bar is over both the 6 and the 3. So the 63 goes on top. And since it's 2 repeating digits, we have 2 9s on the bottom, 63 over 99. Now, both of these numbers can be reduced by dividing by 9, and we get 7 over 11. Remember, this is the Slurpee decimal, right? Tell your parents you want to go to 63 hundredths repeating tonight for a Slurpee. So, changing decimals to fractions is the topic today. I'd like you to do these 5 questions in your notebook. The first 3 are terminating decimals, and the last 3 are repeating decimals. We'll correct these 5 questions tomorrow. That's all for today. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.